As we wrap this podcast up, I want to talk about your most recent book, Managers Matter: The Perils of a Bossless Society. So I saw it circulating around on social media. I think that might have been one of the ways I found you also, and also that you're a keynote speaker at the Free Market Medical Association. But tell us about that book.
Yeah, so the book it was published in October of last year, and it's a trade book. It's meant for the general reader. I hope that some of your listeners will check it out. The book it attempts to push back against a popular narrative that is in, well, certainly the business culture of today, but society more broadly, that, traditional, sort of hierarchical ways of doing things are out of style and are no longer effective. Millennial and Gen Z workers, they need a fluid, loosely structured, workplace with a lot of work from home and flex hours and self-organizing teams, and the sort of traditional managerial role in sort of, formulating organizational policy, helping to, guide and supervise employees, helping to coordinate what people do in an organization. That's too old-fashioned. That's 1950s style, Mad Men culture or whatever. Now we need everything to be fluid and agile and lean and flexible. And what we argue in the book, the book is a little bit of a polemic, or it's a counter-polemic. We say, look, there are advantages to lean and agile and flexible, to be sure, but they're not panaceas. There are drawbacks to those ways of organizing companies and doctors' offices and so forth as well. Those need to be taken into consideration. And maybe the sort of conventional managerial structure and role is not as obsolete as the trendy consultants and authors would have you believe. So I'd like to think the book is also sort of a guide for managers. Okay, our world has changed in some ways, in the digital era and the networked era. How do we balance the need for flexibility and taking advantage of dispersed knowledge, et cetera? How do we balance that against the sort of conventional roles of managerial coordination, helping people to cooperate? And we offer some rules and principles, some guidelines, some heuristics that will help managers figure out how to navigate that difficult territory for their particular company or industry or setting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about reading that book because there has just been a paradigm shift over the last, few decades, and maybe the last decade especially, about how, a workplace environment, it should be different than it was 50 years ago. And like you say, it is different, and it should be different. But by the same token, I think, one thing that your book is talking about is that we still need a boss. We still need a leader. We still need somebody in charge, because any organization, whether it be a basketball team or, a Fortune 500 company, there's got to be somebody in charge.
Yeah. And, we also address the fact that what it means to be in charge is not what people often think it means. It doesn't mean top-down command and control. It doesn't mean dictating what everybody does. What it does involve, right, is obviously setting goals, monitoring performance, helping to choose the right person for the right task, deciding what kind of authority can be delegated to lower levels and what needs to be retained at the top. And ultimately, it's kind of, it was Harry Truman, I think, was famous for having a little sign on his desk that said the buck stops here. Right? Meaning, to be the boss, as we conceive it, you're the person who cannot pass the buck to somebody else. Right. At the end of the day, you're ultimately responsible for what gets done, how it gets done, whether results are achieved or not. Now, that doesn't mean you do everything yourself. You delegate, but you're the one who decides what to delegate, to whom to delegate, when to make changes. Mm-hmm. You set policies and procedures, and you can't pass that responsibility on to somebody else. Right. That's what it means to be the boss.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Peter, it's been a pleasure interviewing you. There's a lot of topics. I could talk for hours on this topic. There's a lot of other topics that you speak on, and I'm going to have you back on our podcast so we can talk about those topics.